But having seen Sonic the Hedgehog 3 now, I will say this about Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Is this my least favorite in the trilogy? Yes. This is kind of a situation, as you can see, with Deadpool and Wolverine.
What's going on, everyone? My Epictastic Nation. Welcome back to the channel. If you are a returning member or if you're new here, welcome. This is Joshua Drake here, Epictastic Joshua, and I'm going to give you guys my thoughts on Sonic the Hedgehog 3. This is the third movie in the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, not trilogy. This is directed by Jeff Fowler, written by the same team who has written the other films, and this stars the exact same cast as the other two movies, but we also have Kristen Ritter and Keanu Reeves joining in. In Sonic 3, we see Team Sonic has to fight Shadow, who is a mysterious new enemy with powers unlike anything they faced before, as he wants to set out for revenge for what happened 50 years ago on a space colony arc, and he basically wants to wipe out humans. And so he's going on a blood-stricken revenge path through most of this movie. So going into Sonic the Hedgehog 3, I was pretty excited to see it because I am a fan of these Sonic movies, and I'm also a fan of the Sonic the Hedgehog character. Like I said in my reviews of the first two, I haven't played all the games, but I have played Sonic Adventure 2, which was the game that this movie was inspired by multiple times on the GameCube. I would play that a lot, playing the hero side, the dark side, and then you also have the side where they also work together, as well as the multiplayer. And when it comes to the Sonic movies, the first movie was one of the bigger surprises of 2020. I know some people don't love this first movie, but this was the one that had to set the groundwork in order for us to get better to where we will eventually get. I think Sonic 2 is my favorite of the series, and it still is my favorite of the series. With my thoughts on this movie withstanding, I think it just took everything from the first movie and not only made it better, but we also just decided to have Knuckles and Tails in that, and it was pretty fun for 2022. It was one of my favorites, 2022. Going into this one, I was really excited because we were also going to get Shadow in here. We have Keanu Reeves doing the voice of Shadow, and I really like the trailers, and I love the idea of this, having Sonic versus Shadow fight each other in a live-action film. Taking a mix of his own video game from 2005 and Sonic Adventure 2, which is my favorite Sonic game, to be honest, because I really like that game. I went into this a little nervous, of course, because this was one of those movies affected by the strikes of last year, and also seeing the trailers, I was a little worried that Sonic would kind of be sidelined as his own movie. But having seen Sonic the Hedgehog 3 now, I will say this about Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Is this my least favorite in the trilogy? Yes. This is kind of a situation, as you can see, with Deadpool and Wolverine, or just Deadpool 3 for short, where that is the weakest of the Deadpool movies, but is it still entertaining? It is entertaining. Starting off with the positives of this movie, I will say Jeff Fowler's direction and the visuals. I'll start with the direction of this movie. Jeff Fowler, for someone who has not made any other movies for this, and he's been nominated for an Oscar for Go for Broke, which was an animated short film, he really has came into his own when it comes to this, and he was also involved with animation for World of Wild Things On and Shadow the Hedgehog. So I will say he does a good job in terms of his direction. Once again, the tone for this movie, you still get some Sonic lighthearted funness here, but this also is taking a much more darker approach, a much more somber and a much more aggressive punch when it comes to this. Because of the character of Shadow, I feel like it's necessary to go in that route, and I actually do think you still get your moments of comedy, but I really like the fact that the director and the writers, they wanted to focus more on the idea of Shadow and the revenge aspect, and what does that do? Are you doing this because you think it's the right thing to do? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing? I really like that, and I like it's a good message it's trying to send, that vengeance is not the answer, but also making choices of your own. And I really do like that part of this story, and I do think Jeff Fowler and the writers, they clearly know the source material like the back of their head. Sure, of course, there are some things in the source material you do have to change for cinematic purposes, but I think it works into this movie's favor. I will say what I was really impressed with is that they did stick accurately to moments in Sonic Adventure 2, mainly with Shadow's backstory. You get that entire backstory through visual storytelling. While there's not a lot of dialogue, and there's probably going to be a lot more flashbacks if we do get more with Shadow the Hedgehog, which we are. No spoilers there in one of the film's post-credit scenes, but I will say I like that part of the film where we do get to see the whole backstory with him and Maria. And that whole backstory, if you are a die-hard Sonic fan, especially someone who loves Sonic Adventure 2, that's going to break your heart, especially knowing what happens. But when we go into the actual story with Shadow in the present day, it's a very well done story, and he is pretty much the kind of heart and soul of this movie. Of course, I definitely really enjoyed him. I love the visuals, of course. You still get your crazy Sonic the Hedgehog action, especially if the third act is pretty much overstaying its welcome, but it's just a fun Sonic action you're gonna get. You get, with one of my favorite parts being the action scene in Tokyo, but my favorite scene comes at the end of this movie, which is a very cool Easter egg to the part in the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 game where Sonic and Shadow team up. I won't spoil what it is they do in there, but I actually really do like that part of the story. So I will say the story is pretty good and the directing is still pretty good once again. And I really like the balancing of tones, because despite how dark it is, it's not afraid to still have some humor in there. Some of the humor this time around, just like the first two, it doesn't work as much, but I will say, for the most part, where I still laugh, I still laugh. And I also will say, I like all the returning cast in this movie is still pretty good. James Marsden, Tika Sumpter, Natasha Rothwell, Shamar Moore, Lee Majab, Adam Pally, they all do good for the most part. Despite how I feel about the character of Wade and that whole situation here, I will say those actors in the human side, they do pretty good for what they are given here. In terms of our main heroes, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, they do a pretty good job here with them as well. Ben Schwartz, he's still very energetic as Sonic, and this time around, we're dealing with a lot more when it comes to him because of the presence of Shadow, and with him and Shadow, their scenes together, it does bring out the Sonic kid in you. So, I say his performance is still pretty good. Idris Elba's Knuckles the Echidna is still very good in his role as well. He doesn't get a whole lot to do between him and Tails, but I will say they still are very present throughout the movie. Colleen O'Shaughnessy as Tails, she does a very good job as Tails once again. I already liked the Tails in the cameo scene in the first movie, and I liked Tails even more in the second one. But here, Tails is still very much fun, and you can tell Team Sonic is still cool. Hey, I'm Team Sonic all the way. Don't get me wrong, I love Shadow, but come on, you're supposed to root for Team Sonic here, but you can also root for Team Shadow because you see what Shadow has to go through on this. And speaking of Shadow, I will say Keanu Reeves did a great job as Shadow. I always loved Keanu Reeves as an actor. Not every choice he makes in his acting filmography is gold, but for the movies that he has done that I very much like, he just has a lot of fun doing it. He doesn't have to say a whole lot of lines sometimes, and he can still be good. Like in the John Wick movies, or The Matrix, or you have Constantine, or even Point Break or such. I do like Keanu Reeves is just one of those guys. Even if the movie's not good, he's just very charismatic to watch. But him as Shadow the Hedgehog, that is great casting. Because Shadow, he's pretty much, while you could say it's a little bit like John Wick with not a lot of personality, for the character that Shadow is in the video games, and for the character he's having to play, he got it down to the essence. He is angry, he is on a revenge-seeking path, and there's a lot of things that I was happy to see. You had the one shot in the trailer where you see Shadow with a gun, which that was fun. That actually put that as a homage to his game. But he's pretty great in here, and I love the design of Shadow as well. As far as Jim Carrey goes, Jim Carrey is still entertaining as Dr. Eggman. We'll get into the other half of Jim Carrey's performance a little bit later, but I will say he still commits for what he gives, and he still very much does a very good job in his role as Dr. Eggman. And he's just having fun with this. He knows it's over the top, but he has fun with that side of it. And it's just great seeing Jim Carrey. You honestly thought he was going to retire? No. We all knew that wasn't going to stick, so I don't even know why he tried to do that. Also have Kristen Ritter as Director Rockwell, who is part of the gun organization. She's not nearly as prominent as I was hoping she would. It's kind of like a Monica Bellucci type situation in Beetlejuice. But I will say, for what she is given, she's pretty great. It's Jessica Jones we're talking about. One of the awesome characters of the MCU and one of the hottest characters of the female Marvel characters. But except she's not playing Jessica Jones here. But she still has the dark hair of Raven. Like I'm looking at a live action version of Raven from Teen Titans. Technical aspects aside, the cinematography is very well shot. Brandon Tross does a great job here. The color grading is very good. You can see what's going on. Everything is in focus. And a lot of the action is entertaining to watch because you're seeing Sonic and Shadow go at it for the most part and majority of this movie. It's also other things too in some of the film's more quieter moments and the more comedic moments. It's a very bright, it's very colorful. And you just get a lot of the vibrancy of Sonic's creative world. So I definitely really enjoyed that. It's well edited for the most part by Al Levine. It's 109 minutes. Some people are taking issue with some of these movies being a little dragged out because of the human characters, but you need human characters to kind of balance out these CG animated furry friends. So in a way, I can let that go because it just comes with the territory with a movie like this when you have CGI furry friends. So in a lot of ways I can let that go. Tom Holkenborg is really good as well. I love the fact they incorporate the theme song from Sonic Adventure 2 into this, even though it's not the main theme of the movie, which is kind of a missed opportunity. So I do hope eventually they do kind of make that a theme for the Shadow spin-off or something like that. But I really did like that they put that into the film. But the score itself is great. It fits with the tone of the film. You get your fun moments, but you also get your more emotional, heartbreaking moments, especially in some of the more devastating moments. So I definitely really enjoyed that part of it. So that was pretty great to see. And for the most part, despite some of the darkness tones here, I laughed. I did laugh for the most part. And I was just sitting there having a great time watching this. And there is a mid-credit scene. Before anyone asks, there is a post-credit scene involving the character of Shadow. I won't say what it is. But for the mid-credit scene, I had this prediction that this certain character was going to show up, or certain characters were going to show up somewhere. And without spoiling them, I'll say one is kind of a robot, while the other character in Sonic's world involves the color of pink. If you know who I'm talking about, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen the movie, what are you doing watching me? Go watch the film. Really, my only real grievances when it comes to this movie is some of the writing, of course, is a bit iffy in terms of some of the story. I feel like there's a few things we could focus on a little bit more. Uh, and also, there's this whole thing with Wade and Knuckles. I get why he's in there to connect with his spin-off show, but it kind of feels like you could have taken that out and just put it into the TV show. But it does earn its purpose there. Some of the humor, of course, isn't always the best. Sometimes this is just a situation you're gonna have to deal with a movie like this. I didn't really enjoy the side of Jim Carrey where he's playing Professor Gerald Robotnik. Now, is he funny as Gerald Robotnik? Absolutely. He does have some moments of being funny, but there are some moments with Professor Robotnik where it just gets way too far into some of the over-the-topness, to the point where it feels like you're watching Jeff Goldblum as the Grandmaster again. Yeah, not a good sign. But it's nowhere near as bad as Jeff Goldblum's Grandmaster. And also some of the human characters like Kristen Ritter and such, I feel like we could have had a little bit more when it comes to it there. So it kind of feels like those could have been a lot better there. But overall, I will say Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is another win for the Sonic franchise. You definitely get some great action. You definitely get what you're coming for in terms of Keanu Reeves' Shadow. The Team Sonic is still fun. Jim Carrey is still fun for the most part as Eggman. The Gerald Robotnik stuff could have been better. Some of the humor could have been better. And there is some iffy pacing in the first 20 minutes, but once the movie kicks into high gear, it kicks into high gear. It's not my favorite of the Sonic movies, but I will say for the third movie in the series, it's the least good in here, but it's still entertaining enough to warrant a recommendation. And because of that mid-credit scene and post-credit scene, I can't wait to see where they go in the fourth one. How is that certain character in the mid-credit scene going to fit into the franchise now? Because they're taking a lot of the characters and putting them in there. This is out now in theaters, so this is going to be fun for your family. Take your girlfriend to it. Take your wife. Take a group of friends with it. You will have a fun time with it. I definitely did. Well, that's going to do it for the video that you just checked out. If you're new here, or if you're a returning member, you must really like what I do in terms of talking all this stuff that I like to do. So, if you guys are interested in me talking movies, TV, music, and anime, and doing all sort of creative fun things with me, please consider hitting the channel icon over here, and there will be a video here and a playlist or a different video here. As always, acknowledge me, join the Epictasticness, stay Epictasticness, and until next time, you guys keep it cool.